Welcome to the Functional Nurse Podcast, where we explore how nurses are transforming healthcare through functional medicine and nurse-led innovation. I'm your host, Brigitte Sager, founder of the Institute for Functional Nursing. Here, we're reclaiming our role as healers and leaders, one root cause conversation at a time. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Functional Nurse Podcast. My name is Brigitte Sager, and I am your host. Our guest today is Nicole Vienneau, and I am really happy to have her here because I talk often about the role of group settings that we can use in functional medicine to help reach a larger audience. And Nicole is pretty much an expert on that topic, so I thought she'd be a great person to have on for us to talk about that more. So I wanted to start by welcoming you to the show, Nicole, and then I want to tell everybody a little more about you. Thanks for being here.
I'm so glad to be here, Brigitte. I listen to your amazing podcast and think it's very inspiring, all the work you're doing and all of the guests you've had on. And every time I listen, I learn something new. So I am very pumped to be here, and then also just glad to be known as a person who has a lot of experience with group coaching.
Absolutely. And I listen to your podcast a lot too. And you have great guests and great enthusiasm for what you do. I wanted to tell everybody a little bit more about you. So Nicole is a registered nurse. She has a master's degree in nursing, and she is a board certified nurse coach. She was in cohort 4 of the Integrative Nurse Coach Academy's nurse coaching program, which is the same program that I did. She is the CEO of 2 companies, Blue Monarch Health PLLC and Restoration Room PLLC, and we'll learn a little bit more about those during this episode. Nicole describes herself as a recovered burned out ICU nurse, which I can relate to. She has been practicing, learning, and teaching holistic well-being strategies for years. Without her daily well-being strategies, she says she is lost, stressed, and has a who gives a crap attitude. She knows that holistic strategies work, and she's found peace in her work and her life. Through her commitment to soul care, Nicole has shifted from a crappy attitude to gratitude, and she set boundaries that bring her joy, confidence, and ease, no matter what the environment. She is also an author, speaker, and as we mentioned, podcast host. She hosts the Integrative Nurse Coaches in Action podcast that you can definitely easily access on inursecoach.com's website or all of the large streaming platforms if you haven't heard it already. And she combines over 20 years of nursing, 30 plus years of fitness and coaching and energy work to partner with nurses and healthcare systems that want their nurses to thrive. I asked her to describe her work background in a few sentences, and she said that she partners with local healthcare systems to support nurses' well-being through coaching in groups, one-on-one, and sharing holistic modalities throughout the system. And she also partners with midlife women who want to go from feeling flat and fragile to sexy and strong with movement practices, better sleep, less stress, and more confidence. Her achievement she is most proud of is being board certified in nurse coaching, evolving from being a high-profile fitness presenter and Reebok-sponsored fitness athlete to focusing on women's well-being for a more whole and holistic approach. Nicole says she reinvented herself and learned to be a healer in a different way. And that was a really difficult process that she's very proud of. So, Nicole, I think we should start by asking the question that you always ask. What brought you through your story of becoming a nurse to a nurse coach and what you're doing today?
Well, I had many a year in intensive care. I did all the intensive cares. I was a high achiever, super intensive care nurse. I did a lot of travel assignments, and then I worked agency. At one point in time, I worked in San Diego, and I would travel every day to a different intensive care unit, which brought me a lot of interesting learnings every time I went. However, it was also really stressful because I didn't know simple things. Like one day I had to ask how to get the soap to come out of the soap container in the surgical ICU. And boy, was that humiliating. And at the same time, it taught me a lot of resiliency and how to survive and thrive in certain areas. However, over time, this being faced with different environments and being in such a high stress environment, I started to notice my personality was shifting. I started to become more apathetic, like I don't really care. I found myself being a little anxious about going to work, thinking about work when I was leaving work, and thinking I had to go back to work in 3 days ahead. Like I was thinking about work already, which I had never really done before. I also started losing patience, like not patience, but patience, my own patience with people. And I pride myself on my patience and listening and so forth. And I just saw this shift. And I also started really not liking my job. I just thought I was becoming a biatch at work, for lack of a better term, right? But I just really saw this shift in how I was behaving, and I didn't really like it. I thought I was just becoming hard, and I didn't really want that to be part of my process of being a nurse. So I never heard the term burnout or compassion fatigue or any of those terms at that point in time. I just thought that I was becoming a hardened, poor, bad nurse. So I thought, well, I should leave the bedside and do something different. I tried some other things and went into management, quality and risk management, did a lot of different things. And I realized I probably should just leave nursing because I'm terrible at this after all of those years and just a passion for nursing. And I took a job at the local YMCA. I was the
Oh, fun.
director. I was the director of health and wellness. And I discovered through that journey of only being there 6 months, it certainly wasn't the job for me. But it was also the recognition that I didn't realize I was burned out. I didn't realize that I was caring so much for other people and I forgot how to take care of myself. I thought I was taking care of myself. I've an athlete all my life, and I was working out. I was eating well, but I didn't realize I had all these other facets to me that were really as equally important, like my mind and my spirit and my connections and my relationships, my environment, all of those things. I didn't realize that those were just as important as my physical and my nutrition. And so I realized, okay, you don't you're not a bad nurse, you're just sick. You're really, this burnout is an ICD-10 code. I mean, it's a real illness, and I had to heal from that. And so I started exploring holistic modalities, and I came, I was on the computer back in the day. That was 2011 or something like that, and I was, what can I do? What can I do with nursing? I thought to myself, how can I combine my skills in nursing with all of my other skills, such as group fitness and personal training and teaching yoga and all of those lifestyle strategies that I really enjoyed. And I Googled back in 2011, and nurse coaching came up with the International Nurse Coach Association, which is what Integrative Nurse Coach Academy is now called, but still INCA back in the day. And I was crying at the computer because it spoke to me so deeply. Like, wow, I could learn all these skills and I could combine what I love and bring wellness to my community instead of being at the hospital. I was thinking ahead, like, how can I do this? What could that look like? And so that's how I discovered nurse coaching. I just ended up going to New York City, cohort number 4. I graduated in 2013. I got my first board certification. I recall being in the first day of the program with some amazing nurses. I felt like I was like, whoa, everybody knows so much more than me. I don't know how I'm going to pass this class and learn all these coaching things and coaching, learn the coaching. And they started the program off with a mindfulness practice, a meditation. And in my ICU mind, I thought, well, this is woohoo. This is so woohoo. And what is this baloney? What is this mindfulness and meditation? I want to learn the coaching. I really want to learn coaching. What are we doing starting off with this? And I had this chip on my shoulder the whole first day just because of the mindfulness practice. I couldn't let it go. And I went back to my room and I thought, I'm not going back tomorrow. I'm not cut out to do this coaching thing. if there's going to be all this mindfulness, who needs that? Blah, blah. So I was in my room and I thought to myself, what are you doing? You just paid all this money. You were crying at your computer because this is what you
Mhm.
wanted to do. What is going on with you? And, I really attributed it to the vulnerability that I was feeling being in this room with all these magnificent nurses, one, and learning something completely new that hadn't really been, it had been birthed, but yet it was still like so new. I felt super vulnerable. There were so many things I knew I was going to be exposed to that would show that, oh, you don't know. And being an ICU nurse, you always have to know. And so
Mhm.
it was
Right.
my, yeah, it was my first time to really realize, oh, you can be vulnerable. You can be in this space. And I went back the next day and Dr. Barbadossi said, hey, who wants to volunteer to be coached? And I was like, I'm getting my money's worth. I'm putting my hand up. I'm going to the front of the room in front of all these people that I'm terrified of at the time. And now they're my dearest sisters. And I was coached by Barbadossi. And it was one of the most, I still get choked up because it's really one of the most vulnerable times in my life, but that it was a turning point for me to show up, not just for other people, but for myself, and to really be heard and seen and feel the power of what it's like to be listened to. And she was just, I wish I could explain this feeling I had just from someone deeply listening to me with no judgment and only wanting to lift me up and hold me. And that was one of the first times that had ever happened for me. And so I thought, shoot, if she can do this for me, I want to learn all that I can to support my communities.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I hearing like what you just this last part you just said is like we know the heart of other nurses. And so when you have another nurse really listen to you, it's just so meaningful, right? Because we know how much we all care for others. You talked about your first date and I had that same chip on my shoulder. This yeah, I did. I was like, "What is this?" I wanted to know things to tell people so that I could
Mm,
help them better. And I like you're talking about with ICU nurses, like when we work in the hospital setting in particular for a long time, you want to know the right thing to do in every and there's no right anything in coaching. It's that person's story and it's about them. And the listening part is so important. Um I want to go back to the beginning of your introduction to this, and you talked about the soap analogy and not knowing how to get it out. And you said that some I'm paraphrasing, but about learning resiliency at the time, and it just crossed my mind how there's too many opportunities for us as nurses to learn to be resilient. Like it's just right, like we don't need any more. And then
right.
that leads into burnout, right? Like that is what has happened to our profession in the last especially the last 3 years is like the resiliency is like do not ask me to be resilient, right? Like I because back then what I'm hearing based on your first day at that is similar to mine is you were encountering a lot of times in your career where you needed to continue to become resilient and be resilient and be resilient, but like not having a lot in your toolkit. And then you go to Inca and you know you're looking for something, but you think it's kind of like me. I knew I what I wanted to know. And I knew I was gonna know it when I saw it. And I get there and everybody's like, doing mindfulness practices but that's when you actually get the tools to be resilient and to help other people be resilient. And you in particular, you help other nurses to work on their resiliency. So, interesting, the the story of your career as a nurse and what you were looking for when you got there and and what you really got.
What I really got. Yeah, I had no idea there would be such a beautiful parallel of learning the skills and tools of coaching coupled with such deep self exploration and self reflection and self awareness, and just being able to learn more about myself so that then I know more about myself so that I can be truly present with someone else instead of trying to figure out myself while I'm coaching someone. Yeah, it is a beautiful thing.
I have watched career for as long as I've been a nurse coach. I wanted to have you on because I think group coaching is a really great way for nurses to reach a larger audience of patients that need, basic information, even, like the kind of education that a nurse can provide when there's time, and being able to reach a whole group of people with a similar concern, I think is very powerful and fantastic. There's so much research now that is providing evidence that people have better outcomes when they are in a group setting for their healthcare. That it can absolutely be financially a good financial decision for in a corporate setting. It's billable through insurance, and I plan to have folks on in upcoming episodes to help us talk through that part that's a little bit more technical. But what I wanted to talk with you mostly about today is your experiences in like coming to the group coaching model, like from one-on-one. I think when we take a nurse coaching program, we learned how to do group coaching, but a lot of our practice that we had done was one-on-one coaching too. And so I felt like that was the direction that I was going to go in until right towards the end. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could have a whole group on this topic and this topic and this topic, and started to have all these great ideas that, I have used, but you have certainly used to a larger extent. And I would love to hear what brought you to the idea of having group programs, and give everybody a little bit of an idea of how you've used them.
Yeah, that's a great question. Around the time when I was 17, I would walk by the YMCA every day to go to my high school. And I was always wondering what was going on in the YMCA. One day I said to my mom, Mom, I think I want a membership at the YMCA. I'd like that for my 17th birthday. So she's like, sure, let's get you a membership. So I went in there. I started to take group fitness classes. And I had no idea what it was. I mean, I just really enjoyed being with other people. And we were all sharing the same vision of something. We were going because we enjoyed the music. We were going because we wanted to move together. We were going there because we wanted to see that instructor that was teaching. And then I knew that, Susie was going to the class and I really liked her. So we would go and we would talk in the class and we would enjoy ourselves. It was a beautiful thing. It was an energy that is indescribable. I decided, well, I didn't decide. Someone saw me coming every day and being so devoted to showing up. And they said, oh, well, you should just become a group fitness instructor. So I was like, 17-year-old.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I had to ask my mom, is it okay if I do this class? She's like, of course. Why don't you do that? Well, it turns out that I didn't know at the time how to hold a beat or talk on a microphone or do any of those things, be the boss of the room, right? I didn't know any of that. And so I just opened myself up to like learning how to do this group fitness thing. So through the years, I had been teaching, and I actually still teach fitness to this day. So when you said 30 years, I think it's more than that now. Because, well, it's maybe about that. And because I loved it. So I was always in a group. I enjoyed the group, and I became a national trainer, and I would train adults and educate adults. And it was a very vulnerable space for people to be in because they were like me, who didn't know how to hold a beat, and you're up in front and you have to be able to show that you can teach a class. So I had all this experience. I became a nurse. I still continued teaching, discovered nurse coaching, went through the whole course, thought I was going to do one-to-ones as well. And I thought to myself, what are you are so comfortable in a group, which, not everybody's comfortable in a group. It doesn't mean you can't do a group. But why don't you just start doing groups? So I went to a mindfulness yoga class one day. It was just a workshop that I really wanted to attend. So I went there. I'm always a learner too. I really like to learn and hear from other people's perspectives and understand things a little bit differently. So I went to, just someone's class that was on brainstorming and coupling it with yoga. So I did that. And she had us have a little journal, and she asked us some really interesting questions, and I just was writing. And I decided, because I have experience with the functional medicine in the capacity of the nutrition and the food plans. Mm-hmm. So for me at the time, I had just completed that. It was a collaboration with IFM and Inca. Susan Luck, my dear sister, who has now gone before us, up above, watching over all that we're doing for nurse coaching now. She taught the class with Monique class, and I was just so riveted by how simple IFM had made their food plans. And I thought, well, I could do this with one to one, but wouldn't it be really interesting to do this as a group? Like when everybody's just going to do this together. So I picked
Mhm.
a plan. I picked the elimination food plan and I tried it out on myself because I didn't want to try to bring a group together if I didn't know how to do it. So I did it for myself. And then I just, I did it for myself. So I was just learning about the plans, I did all of them actually. And then I went to this yoga thing and she was having us brainstorm. And I was just writing and I was writing elimination food plan. Let's get a group together. How many people would I want? Oh, I'd want about 5 people. And how much would I charge? I don't even know how to charge. And so I was just like, I was just writing and writing and writing. And I still have this little book. I should have it so I could show you, but I still have the book. And I look back at it and I designed this program using the IFM's elimination food plan, but turned it into a group coaching. So we started the plan with an education component. Like everybody got the plan. I simplified some of the things so that people could understand. I talked about it. We had questions and answers. We shared information and we shared, just kind of how it was going to work in our life because an elimination food plan, serious stuff.
Mhm.
Like it's really a big change in the normal way that we function in life. So what would it look like in their life? So just fast forwarding ahead a little bit, I had devised, I would make this plan, we would do it, and I'd pick like 5 people, I'd ask for 5 people. So I put it out to all my friends in fitness and all of that. And then I ended up with 12 people in the class. It was
Wow.
super. So, but we did talk about, we did an education component. They had the plan, they could read the plan before they got there. So they kind of knew. And I had it all lined out like this is how the best case scenario could be. And then we would meet once a week. And then it would be, okay, what did you learn, this week? How is your preparation? What is happening with your preparation? What does that look like? And so everybody's able to tell their story. And then you hear the other person and then you're learning from them. And then you can ask a question. And as the facilitator, I don't always have to answer the question. I can just throw it back out at the group. Well, what is the group learning? What have you learned? And who would like to share what's come up for them? So it's always just coming back to the group to have the questions answered. And so we meet every week. And as you going through the elimination food plan, it's always top learnings. Maybe I wanted to potentially bring an education snippet, but it was mostly them supporting each other and me overall arching the creator of the group following the support, but I'm not the one who's like making content and working super hard.
Mhm.
I'm just really the one who's holding the space. And the group is the one who's sharing their power. And for me, that was the most interesting experience because I've never really had the groups in that capacity where people were able to share what was on their heart, what they were struggling with, what they were so excited about that they'd learned. And then that fueled the conversation for the next person. And in the end, after 8 weeks, actually, 8 weeks, I made an 8 week program that we were meeting. And I still have people to this day who reach out to say some kind of health related thing to me out of the blue. So it's really interesting to see how much of an impact the groups have to help the individual at an individual level as well.
I like what you just said in particular about you not needing to be the expert because as nurse coaches, we're not, right? And the patient's the expert. And so when you're leading a group, I think a lot of people sound or they're feeling like, oh, I've never talked in front of a group before. I've never led a group. What if I don't know all the answers? Like you're
Yeah.
speaking to exactly what I hear as like a lot of my students are like, those are their fears. And and you're right, because I think that's such a powerful tool that you mentioned the who else has thoughts about this or who else in the group has had this experience or um I often use that when like my students will have questions and I'll say, does anybody else have any experience? Because maybe I haven't, right? Maybe I've never worked in a setting they work in, and asking for uh, that expert to be somebody else in the group. But also the other thing you talked about that I think is so important for us to highlight is the idea that if one person has that experience, probably other people in the group did too. So you're talking about the elimination diet and week 2 and week 3 and week 4 and reintroducing and I know you have this experience. I have it a lot. Is if I and my students totally know that I do this. Is we have our Zoom meetings and I'll talk for a little bit at the beginning, little snippets of what's to come, and then I'll say, okay, I'll ask an open-ended question. And as a nurse coach, then you just wait, right? And I know you know this. So you're waiting for a group for somebody to start, and nobody wants to start. But then once that first person shares what they're thinking, everybody is so much more comfortable in realizing that they're not alone in what they're feeling. And I think that's the thing that I have heard the most in running groups is that the greatest benefit is the camaraderie and the connection that the members make, not like you're talking about, not your knowledge, but their ability to connect with other people that are having a shared experience with them.
Yeah. I think the power of the group is immense. And it really alleviates the facilitator from having to have so much pressure felt on themselves. And you won't know that until you try, until you experience it, right? Because when I first started some groups, I would feel like, oh, I better prepare and create some content and make sure I have all these things. And I prepare like too much.
Mm-hmm,
And I would
mm-hmm.
never, ever get to the end of all the things that I wanted to do in the session because people want to be able to voice and share what's on their heart and mind and what they've learned. And who wants to just listen to me talk the whole time? Like, you know, and even people, I may know the answer to something and I'll still, well, what does the group think? Let's throw it back to the group. And those are constant things I always say. Well, gosh, let's hear what happened for you this week. Or let's, instead of, yeah, I have a story too, but they're going to, they see me as already the expert, because I'm the one who started the group, right? I'm the one who's sharing that I have some sort of expertise in that area. So yeah, of course I might have the answer, but yet it's more powerful when other people in the group have learned something and it's a revelation for them, and how that energy comes off of them is much more powerful than me, who may have known this information for years. Them having the light bulb moment makes such a stronger impact on the people who are in the group than someone who has known the information for a long time. So to me, it's way more powerful to have the group be engaged and open the space up for them.
Okay, slightly off topic because something you just said, I would really love to hear your thoughts on this is you said expert a couple times as you were talking just now, and I feel like nurses often do not recognize what they have to bring to the table. And so, am I an expert in diabetes specifically, right? That diagnosis. Maybe I wouldn't call myself that if I compared myself to, an endocrinologist who does that all day long, especially if they're trained in functional medicine. But
Right.
would I call myself an expert in diabetes compared to a person who's struggling with their diabetes and doesn't have a coach to partner with them and doesn't have the what I see happen in the course I teach is students start to realize the power of what they know as they move through the course, and they're like, wow, like I didn't realize other people don't know these things that I can share with them. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on, like, especially in a group setting, what you've learned, but just with your wisdom as a nurse coach, the idea that we need to know more before we start to help people versus being able to say, okay, I can do this. Because you've jumped off some cliffs. We were talking about that before we hit record, that like I'm
Yeah.
going to go do this elimination diet course. I've done it once and see one, do one, teach one, right?
Right. See one, do one, teach one. Exactly. Well, I think of all of the nurses, like, look at all the things you do in a day. I mean, like, there, the amount and the breadth of patients that you see, or families that you interact with, colleagues that you're talking to on a daily basis, and the breadth of that. Even if you work on a neuro unit, it's not just neuro things that you're dealing with. You're dealing with the whole person. So for me, it's like, whoa, nurses have so much knowledge. So you're right. I said expert, and I wasn't really. I'm never an expert. I do know some things. Like that's how I do feel comfortable. Like if I'm going to start a group, I should have some kind of a little bit of knowledge about it, more so than the average bear. And I'm also coming at it from a heart perspective, the
Mhm.
heart, coming from my heart. So I'm not creating the group to show off my knowledge. I'm creating the group because I know in my heart that I have the ability to create a safe space for people who don't have safe spaces, right? I mean, they're used to being in a healthcare model that is not always supportive of them being heard and them being embraced for all their messiness, right? We're in a healthcare environment where you have 10 minutes or 3 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is now, that you got to spit out what it is. And even today, I went to the dentist and I was the same thing. I was like, oh God, I have to ask a question. I better formulate it all in my mind because I know I
Mhm.
only have a certain, right? And here I was like, wow, and I know nurse coaches, I know all nurses have the capability to come from their heart and create safe spaces for people to be able to share. And if you're coming at it from being the expert, well, you're definitely the expert of your heart. So if there's only that one thing that you could create a space where someone could show up and share their vulnerabilities, kind of like us showing up for mindfulness, and they created that space for us, Bridget,
Yep.
to learn nurse coaching, and created this safe space, even though I didn't feel safe at first. And yet I still found some capacity to open up myself, knowing and trusting that the people in my group were going to support me in that. So I feel like coming from the heart space takes away a lot of the pressure of having to know everything, because you're not going to know everything, and you're just not. Even if you consider yourself a true expert, you're still not going to know everything. And who says that you couldn't just say, oh, well, I actually don't know the answer to
Mhm.
that. Let's, of course, throw it to the group. Any experience out there with the group? And maybe you hear something and you're like, I'm not sure if that is really the facts. So let me table this, because this is a great question. And can we bring this up again at the next time we meet, so that we can find the things that would be of most value for the group, right? Or maybe I need to go and research something, right? And that's okay. This is just showing up as a human. And really the groups are human to human, true human supportive interactions.
Well, and how much more trust do we build in our patients or the people that are partnered with us in these group settings if we admit that we don't know some things? Because then
Mhm.
what we do say that we speak from the heart about, they know that, they can trust us to say I don't know and not just be acting like we're making things up. I'm glad you elaborated on that a lot, because I think nurses are experts in humans and health and diabetes, and we can be the experts in those things. But I think that for me, and I have a feeling you can relate to this, is the imposter syndrome of like, who am I
Mhm.
to go do this? And I think a lot of nurses listening to this are going to relate to that. Is even for me, every step I've taken in the last 10 years of my career is like, who am I to do this? And then I do it and I realize, wow, there was a need for this and people are excited
Mhm.
about it. And I should have done this sooner. And, but how many times did I think I wasn't enough yet? Like if I only had one more thing first, like one more class or read one more book or one more day of
All right.
digging through art research or something, then I could do it. And I think especially if it's your first time starting a group, that could be a barrier.
Yeah. It's definitely a barrier, to think that you don't have enough. And nurses are notorious for wanting to learn more and more and more, more and more and more.
Yep.
Um, the only thing is with that, it's like you're holding that information back from the people who need it.
Mhm.
So if you are learning something and it's exciting to you, that passion will come across, of course, when you're talking about it, and when you, even if you don't know everything, but it's like it's like you're not going to help anybody because you're not sharing any of that. You're just keeping it for yourself. So to me, it was like, whoa. I actually learned, like, okay, well, I'm going to create this group of, and I've created a lot. I create some groups. I know a fear is like, shoot, no one's going to come. No one's showing up.
That might
Right.
be the
And that's
biggest one, right?
yeah,
What if nobody
that's
shows up?
happened. Yeah, that's happened to me numerous times, actually. I'm like, well, that's okay. I've reframed. So
Yeah.
the backstory is, you mentioned I'm a Reebok sponsored fitness athlete. Yes, I would teach fitness classes to rooms of 1,000 people. So
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
used to people showing up. Like, people, we had this saying, people vote with their feet. So if you have people coming to your classes, you're good at what you do. Here's me stepping out of a lot of people appreciating what I do and my skill in the fitness industry and moving into nurse coaching. Where it's like, what are you doing now? Like, it's like, and oh, you're mindfulness now. You're, like, changing my whole persona of moving into more health and well-being and coupling my nursing education and my fitness. I do a lot of movement related things. However, at the time, it's like, okay, I'm going to create this group. Nobody, who's going to come? I'm going to try to get people to come. Nobody comes. And I'm like, crap, I suck. I'm a loser. All of those shenanigans. I call her Tabitha. She sits on my shoulder sometimes, and she's just jabbering on in the back of her mind. And then I had learned through that, like, it's not me. It's just, perhaps, maybe it's the topic, maybe it's the time, maybe everybody's got a dentist appointment that time. I don't know, whatever is happening. But then I started to realize, who is the most important person? Because that's how I see things now. Who's the most important person in the room? Well, it's not me. It's whoever shows up. Well, if nobody shows up, who becomes the most important person? Me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm the only one. I'm the only one in the room. So then I'm using that time that I was devoting to have the group. I'm using that time to devote to myself. So I've actually used that time to offer myself more self-compassion, more love, some time to just sit in that empty room and just feel that vulnerability, that I was showing up. I was showing up for my community, and maybe no one else showed up, but I'm still showing up for myself because it was something that was on my heart that I wanted to bring. And so even if people are not showing up, I mean, yeah, there's companies that can help us with that. And I know that's, but we have to go through those things, and it's okay. And you learn so much. Like, maybe I just didn't market it properly. I was learning. I didn't even know how to do that as a nurse coach, learning how to
Yes.
market things and do things. But I still feel like, gosh, even if one person is coming, I am loving on them so much. We become the group, the two of us. So now we're supporting each other. And then if 12 people come, great. If 100 people come, whoa, that's a good problem to have, and I need more facilitators. So,
Right.
yeah. So those are some of my thoughts on that. I will say, though, I was listening to, or not listening to, I was reading in May 2023, the Surgeon General Advisory came out with the epidemic of loneliness and isolation, and how many people are struggling with loneliness and isolation. And even before COVID, half of the United States adults reported some kind of loneliness or isolation or lack of connection or feeling invisible or feeling insignificant in their life. Half of Americans
Wow.
feel this. Yeah. And some of those rates are really high in the younger population too, which is quite alarming to me.
And now a quick word about our sponsor, the Institute for Functional Nursing. IFN is the leading education and community platform for nurses bringing functional medicine into their practice. IFN offers everything from short, on-demand contact hour courses to the full functional nursing program, designed specifically for nurses and nurse practitioners ready to practice root cause, whole person care. If you're looking for connection and real-time learning, the Functional Nursing membership includes 4 live meetings every month where we cover case studies and have open discussions and connection. Come be a part of a movement that's redefining what it means to be a nurse. Visit fxnursing.com to learn more and join us. And now back to today's episode.
But the Surgeon General is saying, like, this is a problem that we have here. And Americans are experiencing loneliness. And, of course, we also know that people who are feeling loneliness and isolation, that they're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease and dementias and strokes and depression and anxiety and premature death even. So, this is a huge problem that nurse coaches and nurses in general can help with, because we would just be we're creating these group environments so people can come together to help support them, to realize that they are significant, that they are not alone, that they can be connected to someone else who's experiencing the exact same things or similar things that they can relate to with each other, instead of being isolated and feeling so distressed and creating that circular, never-ending cycle of potential illness. So I feel like this is an opportunity for us to chop that, to stop it.
And, in functional medicine, we talk about loneliness we put it on our list of potential toxins or stressors that we talk about. It can be at the root of someone's health concern. And I'm really glad that you brought up that other perspective of not sharing a group is depriving people of something that you have to offer that they need and they're waiting for. I think that's really important for nurses to realize is, we talk a lot about my students, like, when do I know enough to start using this? And I say, when you can tell somebody why they should do something, it's time for you to use that thing, right? Like, if you can say, I think that, this would be helpful for you because, and you can give some evidence behind it. What we already have as nurses is enough to help people. And when we can add in one new thing, all of our career, like you said, like being like lifelong learners, like all of our career is bringing in new skills that we can share with people. So there's not a tomorrow that's going to make you the right version of a nurse to help people. So I think that's the important perspective to have for starting groups, is that you're probably never going to feel ready enough, but meanwhile all these people are waiting and need you, and so you're depriving them of that. And that can be a really good mindset to have. So, but most importantly, you mentioned you have a list of groups that you have read, and I would love for you to give us some examples of the variety of groups you've led and the settings that you've done them in.
The Elimination Food Plan. So that was back, the first one I did was maybe in 2014. And I've been doing them all along. They've evolved because I've gained more knowledge and more experience and more interactions with more people. It's probably like close to 500 people that have gone through the Elimination Food Plan with me. So that's a significant amount of people that have experienced the Elimination Food Plan. When I did that back in 2014, I reached out to a friend who I knew had a table big enough to hold 12 people. And he had a little room in his office. And I said, can I book this room? I'll pay you a little fee. And he's like, oh gosh, don't worry about that. What are you going to do in there? And I explained it to him. He's like, well, maybe I should do this thing too. But anyways, I found that space and I just hosted it there. And then we had a Facebook group, and then we would meet there every week. So that's how so my cost was very low. I didn't have any cost, just maybe some papers that I photocopied, because we did that back then, and then how that's evolved is now through COVID, of course, everything went virtual. So I just started doing videos of me teaching the topics that are in the Elimination Food Plan and learnings from people as they've gone through. So each topic just gives a little bit more detail about experiences of others, and then support group through Zoom. So the group setting every week, meeting via group. Let's see, I've done Healing Movement Project with a love of mine. What I've discovered is that people are nervous to try new things. when it relates to movement. So wouldn't it be great in my heart? Like I have this saying, create the things I wish existed, right? So
Oh,
create
that's
those things.
cool.
Yeah, create the things I wish existed. So I wish that I could have found a safe space to try Tai Chi and to try yoga and to try these breathing modalities and to try, just different things. And then what I discovered in fitness is that you go to a class, you take the class, and then you leave, right? You talk to the people socially, but you've never really said how you experience, what you noticed or what you experienced within the class for yourself. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could have a spot where after a workout, we could gather and someone could ask you a great question like, what did you notice in yourself today? And not just like I could do 25 jumping jacks or whatever, but really more heart centered. Like I noticed that I gained more confidence because I was able to blah, blah, blah. I noticed that I was watching someone up front and they were so inspiring to me. So all of those things are really important. So I created the Healing Movement Project so that people could start to explore some of these movements like Tai Chi and yoga and some, even HIIT. And then we'd actually do it together. And then the next part of the class was, okay, what was the experience like for you? And then you hear what's happening to Susie and to Johnny and, and so they're like, whoa, I felt that too. Or I had never noticed that, but now next time I'm going to pay attention and listen. Not only is it exciting to hear and learn from other people, but then there's this awareness that comes into you as you are listening. Oh, I'd never thought of that. Or, oh, wow, that is like, I have that too. And of course, that's the whole connection piece of it. But it's just that self-awareness that we often brush over.
Mm-hmm.
So the group settings and the group coaching allow that self-expression, self-awareness, self-reflection, so that you can become closer in tune to what you need and what you need for yourself and what you would like for your community, whatever shows up for you, right? Journaling, we do all different stuff. I love seniors, so I've done a class that's called Move with Friends, and that was active aging adults. So that's an aging population 70 and older that I would gather, and we'd do the same thing, except it was related to movement processes as we age that we lose. So a lot of balance related and agility and even power that they were not even realizing that they had lost because of age. So, and
Mm-hmm.
then we would talk about that. We maybe share a poem related to something, and then that would bring up something. So it was just always is coming back to the group. What was your experience? What did you notice? What are you feeling inside? What is your heart telling you right now? What are you noticing in your mind? It could be anything like that. And coming back to that, in those situations, because you also asked me, where did you do them? So
Mm-hmm.
Healing Movement Project was an online thing. That was the first time I'd ever really done an online movement. So I'm teaching people Tai Chi, and now I'm trying to see them,
Yes.
are you safe? And, my personal training background coming out, are you safe? Like, how is this, and, the awareness of that, and then transcending that, like the awareness in their own bodies. So, and Move with Friends was at a local community center where I knew a lot of seniors were. So I just went over there. I said, hi, I'm Nicole. I would love to have this group here. And this is what I'm envisioning. How does that align with what you do here? And they're like, yes, that sounds
Mm-hmm.
great. And I had a plan. Like I just, I didn't build the program yet because I didn't even know it was going to exist, right? I just knew I wanted to do it. I don't want to build anything. I have this other saying that I say, it's like, build the plane as you fly it, because sometimes you don't want to I don't want to spend a lot of time up front on creating something unless I know I'm actually going to do it. So
Yeah.
sometimes I will just find it. Am I really going to do this? And then once I know I'm doing it, then I'm going to create it. So I have a vision of what it's going to be. I have the basics. I can go somewhere and explain it and share my vision of what that is. How do you see this fitting into your community? And is this something that you would consider? And then follow up, because you always have to follow up if that's what if you're going to be going to communities centers. Healing circles. was another one. Common wheel, which is not a movement based at all. It's just sitting in circle. It could be anything from a book club you can run as a healing circle to I'll be starting one here at a healthcare center here for nurses. What did I call it? Something about loss, turning loss and grief into gifts
Mm.
is the healing circle that I'll be hosting here in September at a hospital. The healing circles are gathering like interested people in a room and just opening up the space to speak without any judgment. There are definite guidelines. I always have guidelines. That's another thing I always do for every group. I create the guidelines within the group. The group creates it. I don't make them. Unless it's something that I really want in it and nobody said it, then I'm like, may I add something? And then I add that. And then I always bring up the rules, the agreements every time we come together, just to keep everybody on track. Healing circles, when I first started doing them, again, I went to a community center and asked if there's something, speak to the manager. It's usually a volunteer at the front desk, find out who the manager is, speak to them, not the volunteer. And then you kind of work your way in that way. I've done things at yoga studios, with chiropractors, with physicians, at physicians' offices. I've worked in churches. So if I'm involved like at a gym or if I'm going to a yoga studio, they're always looking for people to add it. Like they're going to make a little bit of money as well. And you're going to make some money too. So if you're looking for it as a revenue stream, it's easy to go to a yoga studio and say, these are some of the things I offer. Would this be of interest to your community?
And what's
Sometimes
the worst that's going to happen, right?
Right. The worst that's always going to happen is they're going to say no. But if you don't ask, guess what the answer is already? No. No. Right. They don't know. They don't know that you have a skill. And you do have a skill. All your listeners have very unique, very powerful, very brilliant breadths of skill that they can offer their communities.
They do. And I think a lot of nurses undervalue that. I love your hustle, because I'm like, sometimes just going and saying, this is who I am and what I offer and where does that align? Like the way that you said that is the perfect way for any nurse to be able to go do that, to say, hey, I am a functional nurse or a holistic nurse, and I have a lot of knowledge I'd love to share with our community on this topic, or I'd love to hear what topics you're interested in at your facility, or whatever that might be. You mentioned the hospital setting, and in functional medicine, and if you heard that episode where can a functional nurse practice, is we talk a lot in the course about like, where can you use this, and then the challenges, but the fact that it is needed everywhere, and it's needed in hospitals, and what you're offering is needed in hospital settings for the nurses themselves. So what has that experience been like for you, taking nurse coaching and holistic nursing concepts and trying to bring that into a hospital setting?
I'm going to bring this back to something you said earlier about imposter syndrome. And, coming from a critical care background, and now I am using many, many holistic modalities, from drumming to singing bowls to Reiki energy to poetry to art to dancing to all kinds of things. And I still have Tabitha sit on my shoulder and say, gosh, Nicole, you're a woohoo, you're a little woohoo. So I still have that little bit of, in the hospital setting, like they're going to think I'm a little woohoo. I'm growing with that. Like I'm acknowledging that is a little bit of still a little something I'm working through. Because, coming from the black and white yes and no model of protocol, it sometimes feels a little awkward when I show up in an ICU and now I'm saying, hi, I'm Nicole. I'm a nurse too, and I used to work in critical care, and now I'm doing holistic nursing. And these are some of the things that I would love to offer you today. And they just like look at me sometimes like, what is it that you're doing? And so I said, I'm explaining maybe Reiki. This is what I would love to offer you today, or maybe some aromatherapy. In that environment, I feel like a little bit like, and at the same time, I can see them and I can see me in them, my past me. And I can also see my present me in them as well, and how I can help. And so that's been an interesting journey for me to go into this environment in this new capacity and new way. It's very fulfilling and very richly rewarding for me to come into an ICU and, now they're like, oh, Nicole's here. So, and I've not been there very long. I've only been in this environment for coming up to 4 months now. It was a contract that I achieved, as a contract that I worked hard for. It took me about 10 months of going back and forth, not in the sense of negotiating contracts, but just developing the relationship to say, I'm new in this community and I would like to offer these things here for your employees. Is there any opening for that? And finding the right person and just pursuing and knowing in my heart it's something that I wanted to do, and that I have the capacity now to be able to give back in this way. It took, some people say, oh, nothing's working out for me. And I'm like, I've been talking to the same person for 10 months, trying
Right.
to, and eventually it's worked out. I feel like, we have to be persistent. If it is truly what you want to do in your heart, then you've got to make the ask. You have to, because you will be wondering why, a year from now or 6 months from now, why didn't I ask? And someone else is going to come in and take it out from you. Go in there and make the asks. I'm doing things that I never thought I would do in my nursing career, and I'm really enjoying doing them. I really feel it's important for nurses to recognize that they are allowed to have a break, that a break is normal. And when I'm going on the units and I'm on a cardiovascular step down unit and I see people running around like hair on fire, then I'm reaching out to them and, would you like, introducing myself. I'm new to this facility and this is what I'm coming to help you today. And they're like, oh, what are you going to do? And then I'm telling them, I'm going to help you take a break. What? I can't take a break right now. I said, well, this is what we can do, and, okay, maybe you're not ready at this second, but this is what I'm offering you. And I'm going to be here for the next hour and a half. Can we fit it in somewhere within that time? And then they're coming back to me. Yes, I would like that. Because then they see, well, the other thing I do is I don't do any of these treatments in a private room. I do it at the nurse's station. So I am normalizing that a nurse sits down, another nurse, or, another person is showing them compassion and showing them deep love and respect, with hands on their shoulders or hands on their head, just and whispering phrases of affirmation and love and gratitude, so that they're being filled up instead of getting the life sucked out of them. So I feel very blessed I'm getting emotional because it's a beautiful thing to be able to experience that. And the
I think
greatest
they
thing,
need that more than we did back then, right? Like, I feel like
yeah,
the now
yeah,
it's like so critical for them to feel loved and
right,
supported and valued. So that is
yeah.
beautiful that you're able to do that for them.
Yeah, and I do other things too, but that's fun too. That's fun. It's fun for me to go out there and do that and I'm also vulnerable too. So I think that they can see that and feel that, because I'm coming to it so authentically that I am coming to offer my love and gratitude to support them for their work. And that's how I see all nurses in this work is that we're vulnerable and we're real and we found something that has worked for us, and that we see the value in wanting to share that with other people who never experienced it. There are so many people that I've now met in the hospital that never had anyone put hands on or had their neck massaged or experienced Reiki or just, I have put a few drops of aromatherapy in their hands and have them rub it together like orange, a scent of orange, and then just
Mm-hmm.
three breaths. And they're like, whoa, it's like, wow, this has changed my perspective. And it's like, that's things they can now learn to do for themselves if they want to. So it's been really rewarding to be there. And I have 2 contracts, one with 2 different hospitals. And I'm just, I got the word the other day. They said, Nicole, you're doing such a great job. You've really, you really have made an impact. And we're thinking of next year making this a full-time position.
Wow.
I
That
know.
is so exciting.
Yeah. Like, how cool, like, to have a full-time nurse in a facility that is supporting my job is RN health coach to focus on nurses. And I, of course, touch other people there too, because there's pharmacy techs and pharmacists and CNAs and unit secretaries, and I just go and love on everybody.
I'm thinking of us seeing, our hospital was really open-minded as far as hospitals before it was bought by a corporation. And so the nurses were empowered to make changes and do really positive things. And we had a great alternative therapies program. And, sometimes I would be really swamped on a really high acuity floor, and they'd come down the hall with the miniature horse or a harp or the aromatherapy gal. And I would just be like, who is this alien concept to me 9 hours into a shift, needing 3 breaths, you know? Um, that uh we talked about loneliness earlier, and I can say that working in the hospital setting, there's all this camaraderie as a nurse. And when you step away from that and become this alien, right? That you're talking about. Like when you come back in there and you're like, oh, I have essential oils and I wanted to just like give you some positive energy. Or with functional medicine, everybody thinks it's woo woo and it's not. It's biochemistry, right? Like it is 0% woo woo. The loneliness thing I wanted to touch on because it's isolating to be a holistic nurse sometimes for me, at least in a local sense, because I turned into a weirdo as far as nurses, right? I'm what you're describing, going back in the hospital with these crazy ideas. But I work on a computer all day long, so most of what I do is behind a screen. But what I did get is, so like the nurse coaching thing where you talked about, is like all the connections with people that are like me that are also nurses, us. I think we're a bunch of rabble rousers, really, like the think outside the boxers. And I wanted to acknowledge that because I think a lot of nurses that aren't doing the evidence-based black and white exactly the way that you just described your experience going into the hospital at the beginning is, that's how I think a lot of us feel becoming nurse coaches and becoming functional nurses and offering holistic things to people. I wanted to acknowledge that. And then I wanted to share just for a second my experience having my first group setting, but it's really so we can talk more about yours before we wrap up.
Yes.
Your passion at the moment. Or one of them, is my first group coaching session was a women's group, and it was going to be some education and some connection. And but I wanted to leave it open enough to find out what they were interested in, and I said, I'm not going to finish the last couple group sessions, like what our topic's going to be, until I find out what you guys are interested in. And as a primary care provider, I knew how my patients were being treated in gynecology. I knew how my patients were feeling when they were going through struggles with hormone imbalances, things that I didn't feel skilled enough yet and confident enough in to support them, hoping I send them to an expert and them feeling really unheard. Really, common example is things like going through menopause and being given an antidepressant. What I found in the group was, I thought I was going to be sharing some knowledge and creating an open space for conversations about things that ended up not being on their radar as a group of women that were all in perimenopause or menopause, and they wanted to know the things that nobody is helping them with. And it's so sad. And so I didn't expect to develop a passion for that topic. And I ultimately was like, who are the experts in this? And so I began to study hormones more, and sex hormones specifically, and became a board certified menopause practitioner because I wanted to have something measurable behind my name, that like I can speak with conviction. I'm not just like learning this, in a YouTube video or a webinar and sharing it with you. This is an important topic that isn't given enough respect in our current medical setting, allopathic medicine. And it is something that you get really lit up about. And so I wanted you to be able to share a little bit more about that.
Yes. Menopause. Yes. The stages of menopause, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and midlife women. And yes, I do get fired up about it because I had no idea. One,
Me too.
no one in the world had ever spoken about it. And here I am coming up to midlife and I'm starting to experience changes in myself. One of them was anxiety, and I had never, ever had anxiety. I'm up there teaching in, big stadiums of people. I should get nervous, but not anxiety where my heart is pumping out of my chest and I can't focus, and all just like random things were going on. And no one had ever spoken about perimenopause and the erratic hormone shifts that we have. And that is why I was feeling the way I was. And I didn't know. And I wish that somebody had talked to me about that. Then I realized, wow, that's happening for a lot of people, and how can I help? Because I didn't like this feeling, and I'm learning a lot. I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do claim to be a person who can create a safe space for others. So
Mhm.
I decided I'm going to create a group for menopause women in any stage of menopause. And some women are funny because they're like, well, I'm not in menopause anymore. Well, we're post menopause, but we're all aging. So you're going to fit
Mhm.
into this group anyways, right? So I decided I would create a group. It's called the Menopause Movement Mission, because many women feel that they cannot ever learn how to lift a weight, like resistance training. So that was my intention first. Like, let's get some women together because we're all going through some sarcopenia. We are losing muscle. We're lost our protective mechanism of estrogen. We're prone for a lot more disease processes like heart disease and osteoporosis and dementias, all of them, because we're losing glorious hormones or can't metabolize them, all of those things. Anyways, so I decided I would create a group called the Menopause Movement Mission. And I was just like, who's going to come? Again, who's going to come? So I just started reaching out to people that I knew. And, it's kind of weird, I want to start this group. And they're like, yeah, no one talks about that. Right. And anyways, I started a group. I like to keep my group small because I want to have opportunity for anybody and everybody who wants to say something to be able to have space to say it. So if our groups get too large, there is an opportunity to do that. So you have to decide as you're figuring out how you're going to do groups, like how many people is going to be a good fit for you and your topic. So just throwing that out there. So you don't want to have a huge group if you want to have people talk. If
Mhm.
you want to just educate, you can have a big group. But if you want to do true group coaching and have build and have community, you need smaller groups so that you can encourage communication. I decided I would need education just like you. You became a board certified menopause board
Practitioner, yeah.
certified. So I decided I would just start learning things on menopause. I'm actually in a program now that is a practitioner program for menopause. And I became a menopause fitness specialist first because that's where my love and passion is in movement and how women can learn how to move in their bodies as we're aging. In fact, it's the most important time to do it. It's one of the most important times. It's never too late to learn, never too late to pick up a weight, never too late to learn and feel how your body is gloriously able to do so many things as we age. We always start first thing because it's at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Start early in the morning. And the reason is for me is because our cortisol levels are highest then. So that's our metabolic energizing hormone. And we train early in the morning because we want to be able to be recovered, to be able to sleep by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing it early in the morning. And we always start first thing in the morning with just either a breathing exercise, a poem, a question of self-reflection, and time to connect with each other. And I truly believe that, yeah, they love the movement part because that's at the end. But what most people love is this, wow, we're actually all, 12 or 15 of us. We're here at 7 a.m. and we're talking about menopause stuff or midlife things like being sandwiched in between, children and your parents as they're ill and
Mhm.
taking care of both of those sets of people, and how difficult that is, or sleep and how maybe sleep is evading people. And and we're hearing from the group, oh, this worked for me or that worked for me, and also some science too, right? I may offer an education on something specific, and then we go from there. So, the group morphs, ebbs and morphs. And then we usually have about 40 minutes to half an hour to actually do movement at the end. And that's how I designed my group. And I want your listeners to understand that you can make a group however you decide to make the group design. There isn't a formula. There is not a protocol that you have to follow steps 1 through 7 to create a group. You just have to create something that you want to create. And you have such breadth of knowledge to pull up and create these spaces for people. They want them. They're looking for them. They may not know at first that they're looking for them, and then you show up. It's like, oh, that's for me. So
Mhm.
that's what's happened with the Menopause Movement Mission. And I'm at the point where I'm probably going to be looking at expanding this program and adding another person that is part of my group that then is going to become a teacher of a group leader for the next group. So it's really fun to see things evolve, and we don't know until we open ourselves up to the possibilities. And as Barbara Dossi always says, sometimes you don't have all the answers, you just know you need to begin.
I think that is a really motivating thought from one of our great holistic nurse leaders. I wanted to mention before we say anything else that I'm going to have links to how people can reach out to you and access this, because I bet you some of these listeners are going to be like, wait a minute, where do I go to sign up for that course?
Yes, that
So
was so
so there
much
will be
fun.
there will be links for that so everybody can get more information on how to connect with you. I wanted to finish with some insights into functional nursing and your insights into nurse coaching, because we talk about that a lot and how they're almost conflicting. And you're talking about in your groups, you have to consider that, right? Being the expert
Yeah,
and sharing too much versus listening. What has been your
yeah.
experience having some of your knowledge from functional medicine and
Mhm.
your skills as a nurse coach and a wonderful listener?
I think that's a beautiful pairing. And I think you've got to be very clear for yourself on what kind of group you're going to be creating. So if you want to have a group and have them share a lot, then maybe that's the path you travel. Maybe you have a very short snippet of education if you want to share some kind of knowledge, right? And then you're opening it up for reflective questioning, open-ended questions, so that you can use your skills as a nurse coach to offer reflective listening and supporting the group in that way. But if you want to create a group where it's more education, like maybe it is that you are looking to have a diabetes prevention program or something like that, that you want to be able to have a heavier amount of minutes, maybe a session is an hour or whatever, however you plan it. You can plan it. You can plan it 90 minutes. You can plan it 2 hours. You can plan it 30 minutes. You make the decisions. But maybe if you did decide it's an hour program and you want to have more education in it, you have to be just very clear with yourself as far as how much participation you want. I would imagine coming to a group, people are most used to coming to an education style of group. So they come in, they're going to learn a topic, and then they're going to go, and then they go back in their life. But there is nothing there for me. The saying, knowledge is power, is a good saying, but I like to just tweak it a little bit and say, in an educational kind of class, knowledge is potential power.
Mm.
Because for me, I know myself, this is coming from my own eye now. I go to a class and sometimes I like, ooh, that was exciting. That was great. Oh, I love that. And then I go home and I don't implement anything. It's like I didn't even go to that class.
Yep.
So yeah, so these group settings, you have an opportunity to take the education and then incorporate, like, ask the questions, what does this look like in your life? How do you see yourself implementing anything that stood out for you today? Like, or what is one thing that you thought was really interesting in today's education session? Because maybe you educated for 45 minutes, and now you have 15 minutes at the end where you can open it up, not just for questions, but for reflection, so that people can say, oh gosh, no one's ever asked me what I'm going to do with this knowledge now. Now I have to like say it out loud, and I'm going to make a commitment almost. Like, that's coaching. Because now people are like standing up and not physically standing up, but they're standing up for themselves, right? They're saying, I thought that this was fascinating, and this is what I would like to do with that. So then you can still do it both ways, but maybe you only have a short amount of time to do that. So you have to decide, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be an educator
Mm-hmm.
and share your knowledge and have short time for group coaching? Or do you want to have, a topic where you're really is important and open it up, and maybe even like cut it down, like 5 minutes of education. Now let's reflect on that. And now let's do another 5 minutes education. Let's reflect on that. And so you can morph, you can change it. And like I do definitely know this about myself. Like, I could make a whole agenda, and then I get into a group coaching session, and like my whole agenda is like it's not even gonna be like that, because I have to go with the flow of the group. So you can have a plan, and you must have a plan. Can't go in and not have a plan. But you also need to be aware that your plan is often going to be shifted and morphed, and you're going to learn
Mm-hmm.
your group, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that group, that was a flop, right?
Yeah.
And now next time when we meet, I'm going to adjust. And great, it's your self-reflection of your creation. So you get to do it. You get to choose it.
Look at all your groups you've had and how they've evolved over time. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking what you're saying now about your description of the elimination diet group initially is like that maybe that first coaching group is a lot of knowledge, right? Like for an elimination diet, they need to know facts. What is this going to be like? What
Yep.
can I eat? What can I not eat? What is this experience going to be like? How do I do this with other people in my house? But that turns into a conversation about, does anybody else have an idea of, how to implement this with other people in the home? And then but what you said after that, when you started talking about your follow-up visits, were different, because it was, what has this experience been like? And you're not an expert anymore, right? It's about them connecting and sharing their experiences and getting new, like you said, new insights, where they hear somebody else say something they hadn't considered, and it shifts their perspective, maybe helps them have a bit more positive mindset about the challenges of working on it. But all of that is the synergy of a group that they would never get if they had just like a one-on-one education session with you, or a one-on-one coaching session where they can only have their own thoughts, right? Like, getting to connect with other people is the really big part of this.
Sorry.
What what would you say that you really want to share with anybody that is on the fence about what they have to offer, and hustling the way that you have to really get this out there?
You have to know your intention. What is it that you really are wanting to share? Not in the sense of like your education and the program and all of that, but like, why are you wanting to do a group in your heart, in your spirit? What is it that's calling you there? Because when you get in touch with that, that will support you moving through the steps to actually make it happen. I think that's something that we often don't go back to people say, oh, your why. Yeah, that's true too. But it's like, what is deep in your heart and your spirit that is calling you to want to create these things? Because if you don't create them, yes, people won't be able to get to experience them. Yes, you won't be able to help people, but it's also like a missing piece for yourself. Like you won't be able to fully come to you in your authenticness. And it's a group coaching, and creating models of group coaching. And I hope I really got across that there is no protocol to it. You can create it how you want it to be. That allows you freedom, and the freedom then shows up in how you create the program, and you show up in that program. So, it's more than just gathering people and helping people. It's also for yourself, and for your creation, and for your touch, and your unique touch on the earth and planet.
Thank you. That makes me think of me and you in the hospital compared to now, and I know I cared about my job back then, and I loved my coworkers, and I loved being able to help people. But man, I don't even feel like I work now, like I love what I do so much, and it is what I was called to do. And I think we're called to nursing, we're called to holistic nursing, we're called to nurse coaching and functional nursing, and everything that you're doing is always filled with so much energy, right? And if people have heard you on your podcast, you have a lot of enthusiasm about what you're offering. And so I can really relate to what you're saying. If a nurse is being called forward, right? We take that step and realize that it's with the intention, that the calling from our heart to do what we feel is the right next step for us, and what we can share our gifts with people that are around us. And that can change over time, right? And like each part of
Mhm.
your coaching journey in a group coach setting, you've talked about the way that has grown and evolved. And even a program you've designed, you learn from the participants, and you learn from each
Mhm.
time you use your elimination diet has, right? You said it's just been evolving over the years. So knowing that you don't have to have it perfect the first day you do it, and maybe the next time you'll do it completely differently because you learned so much from that. But the starting and the being there for people, if it's in your heart to do it and it's what you're being called to offer as your service to the people that you're caring for, it's going to be great, right? Like it's going to be what they need that day. I really appreciate all of your insights today. And thank you for sharing your experiences with offering group coaching. I encourage everybody that hasn't yet to tune into your podcast and check for the links in the description for this podcast so they can connect with you more. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Brigitte. Thanks for all your work. And thank you, listeners, for listening. I've so enjoyed sharing a little bit of my wisdom.
And until next time, everybody, be well. Thank you for tuning in to the Functional Nurse Podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps other nurses find this movement. To learn more about our programs and join the community at IFN, visit fxnursing.com. Together, we're not just rethinking healthcare, we are rebuilding it from the inside out.